Well, hi Jenny, I'm Allison Morgan. As you know, I'm one of the librarians here. Been here about 15 years, and we appreciate you coming in today. We are working in the library with the Center for Innovation on a design thinking workshop that's going to be part of a conference we're having for librarians in May. So a group of regional librarians are going to come in, go through a design thinking process, and as part of that, we're doing empathy interviews with our library users. Okay. So that is literally what we're after. Empathetic experiences with the library. We're interested in memories, personal experiences, and how you use the library.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with sort of big picture questions, and then focus specifically on the functionality of how you use the Xavier Library.
Okay.
And then ask you to sort of brainstorm about future ideas. But before we get started, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do here at Xavier, how long you've been here, that kind of thing?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I am a faculty member in the Communication Arts Department at Xavier University. My name is Jenny Tighe, and I've been here for 21 years. So I'm at that point where I'm recognized as maybe one of those folks who's been around a while. So I probably remember a little bit about what's been part of the past. But I do try to do my best to be innovative in my teaching. And one area that I particularly enjoy in terms of pedagogy is involving technology and resources.
Oh, great. So when you're talking about the past, you probably remember a lot of the changes that the library has gone through.
That's correct.
Yes. In fact, it didn't look like it does now when you were here 21 years ago.
No, we
right?
used to bring our paper files in boxes to the archives in the old basement. So those times have changed.
Those times have changed, yes. Very good. All right. Well, we will get started with a very broad question. What is your earliest memory of using a library? Any library?
Any library. I remember very distinctly getting my own library card and going to the library. I'm from Cincinnati, so for those that are local to the area, the College Hill Library was my home library. And the first book that I checked out was Flicka, Ricka, and Dicka and their polka dot dresses. And I remember being so proud to bring that book home. I'm the oldest of four, and I got to read that book to my sister. And so I have this vision of a big responsibility in borrowing a book, knowing that I had to return it and that it was my job to read to my younger siblings.
Oh, very nice. What made you pick that particular book? Do you remember?
It was a book that my mom had told us the story for a long time, so I knew about it, and when I saw it on the shelf, I was like, oh my gosh, I can get that story now, and I can share that with someone else.
Oh, nice. And what was your siblings' reaction to that? Did they appreciate you being the older sister?
Well, they had heard the story also, and they were more than happy to sit on the couch and get my attention, so it turned out to be a win-win.
Oh, very nice. How old were you when you all that happened?
I was probably 6.
Oh, okay, so pretty young, yeah.
Yeah, first grade.
Okay, very nice. Okay, again, sort of a big picture question. Can you describe a memorable library experience? It could be at the College Hill branch, it could be here, it could be when you were in school.
Actually, one of my most memorable, this is a non-academic response, in the 6th grade, when my children were in the 6th grade, it was the first time that they had to do a research paper. And so I got to be the parent that went on the trip to the main library downtown and working with 6th graders in developing a thesis and then actually getting to go through the library to collect books that they would use in their research. And teaching those very beginning research skills is probably one of my most memorable experiences and something that I really enjoyed because for young students in particular, touching the actual documents, thinking through that critical process of what should be on my list, what should I include and not include, and then having the entire public library to as our kind of our area to search was really exciting.
Wow. So you went as a parent, but like a parent helper with
Correct,
the class?
correct.
And one of your children was in the class?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Did they like having mom with them?
Well, as the mom, you don't help your own child.
Right,
You help
okay.
other people's children
Right.
Until they saw that other people's children were actually getting the work done. And then I think my son ended up coming around,
Okay. Cool.
seeing how we were doing.
Did you do that more than once?
I did. I have 3
children.
children, yes.
Okay.
That was probably one of my highlights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So, moving the focus specifically to the Xavier Library, what are some of the reasons that you visit this library?
One thing that I have appreciated about the Xavier Library is the ability of the librarians, such as yourself and the others providing resources to, as I would say, change with the times. And one thing that was really noticeable for me is when the Xavier Library started moving parts of their collection physically out of the space and redesigning what that space would look like. And so as the library has moved to providing more resources that are available using technology, what I've realized is there are a lot of other ways that the library can be used as a resource. So early on, and if I've been here 20 years, honestly, most of those 20 years I've relied on librarians as resources in my classroom. In particular, I had Tim McCabe, who was the librarian for communication arts, come and speak to my students about how to research critical issues for oral communication type presentations. And so what I found is that not only are there resources in the library, but the librarians themselves offer just key critical skills that I believe students need.
Oh, great. Have you seen the ways in which we come to your classroom and teach change over the years?
I have. In fact, recently a new librarian or new liaison with the Communication Arts Department, James Green, came to my class, and I was teaching a media and culture course and found that students were Googling to gather their information. And so James said, well, we have SearchXU. He said, I will put SearchXU up against, any internet browser, any search engine. And so he came to class, and I had some students that were really dedicated to Google, but James showed that there are some ways that the SearchXU function can lead to better information.
Do you find when you bring the librarians into class, do your students respond to you differently? Like, do they tend to still ask you for information? Do they ask the librarians for information after that? Have you seen any change?
Over the years, we've tried a number of different techniques. I think what works best is if the librarians provide personal information. So, here's my contact information, here's my email, here's when I'm available. And I think students, if they can develop a relationship with the librarian, they tend to then be willing to use them as resources.
Okay, great. Very good. Can you, sort of putting on your researcher hat, so not a teacher, but doing your own research and scholarship, can you tell me about the steps you take when you're looking for library resources?
One thing that I find is while there's so much that is available electronically, there are still some sources that aren't. And recently, when Xavier revamped its core and developed an oral communication flag, I was tapped with putting together a resource guide using LibGuide, which actually you helped me with, so that was really significant. But in doing that, I had to find some seminal type articles, and using Iliad and working with Sydney Reed was really helpful. And so as much as there are certain things that I feel like I can do myself, I still feel like I get to that point where there are resources and expertise that librarians or the library is able to provide that I wouldn't be able to get on my own.
Oh, okay. How do you feel when you reach a point in your research and need the library or need a librarian, or it's 2 a.m. and you're working? Do you feel stuck, or is that like a challenge? How do you feel about that?
Actually, I use the chat, and I know that sounds really crazy,
No,
but because I don't want to be held up like every other customer. Right. I want whatever it is that I need right now, and whether that's access to a database. Recently, actually, I had a problem in a course where I needed paper copies of periodicals, and they were not available. They hadn't been processed yet, and Ann Davies dropped what she was doing, figured out how we were going to get access to these materials right away so that I could be successful in that research. So I don't think I'm the most patient person, but I do find that there are, whether it's a physical resource, an electronic resource, or something like chat, that I can pretty much move forward in getting what I need.
Oh, great. Sort of related to that, can you maybe talk about a time when you felt really confident that you'd found everything that you need? You had a project or a research issue, and you really felt like using the library, you got what you need.
Probably working with you and Michelle Early on the LibGuide project.
Okay.
I was tasked with developing a resource without really knowing what is the best tool to use, and so the three of us meeting and thinking that through, I felt that you gave me ideas that I wouldn't have come up with on my own. So while I was the content expert, I really didn't have a vision for what that product would look like and how it would best serve other faculty at Xavier.
How did working with the library on that project, sort of that collaborative relationship, with you being the content expert and us helping you sort of figure out how to present it, how did that sort of change or affect, if it did in any way, your idea of the library or how we could help you?
Well, it gave me the vision that says that if we work collaboratively, we'll come up with new ways of sharing information. And that project actually became a model for other flags at the university.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of in the forefront of thinking of new ways that we can share information. So for me, that was definitely a win-win.
Okay, great. So, sort of the flip side of that, can you talk about a time, you mentioned sort of maybe trying to find paper articles that weren't available, maybe expand on that, or another example where you had difficulty finding something, or maybe actually never did find what you needed, and how that made you feel?
Honestly, with the change in technology, one of the big difficulties is just the moving of information from one vehicle to another. So if it was a special VHS tape that somehow didn't make it into the DVD realm or now is not being streamed, trying to rethink, okay, these were resources that I've used in the past, what new resources are available. It's really difficult to after you've done or made that investment, to then go back kind of to square one to say, well, now what will I use, or what is available? So sometimes that's overwhelming, and it's easy to get into information overload because there are so many resources. So not the ones that I particularly am used to, but what new resources are available.
Right. So you sort of have to change the way you're thinking about your whole class then, if you're looking for
Correct.
resources that you use in the class.
That's correct.
Yes. So how does that impact you as you go along?
Well, the specific example was a 14-minute excerpt from a 2020 television episode,
Yes.
Which a librarian found in a humanities DVD in another location.
Okay.
So sometimes it's rethinking how something might be stored or where information might be located. So in that case, we were able to get a hold of the exact document. But I think using SearchXU, which I learned because it beat out Google, and some of the advanced search functions can streamline the process much more easily, I guess, than I expected.
Okay, great. Well, sort of playing on that, if the library didn't exist and if Google didn't exist, where would you go for information?
The idea of going to the bookshelf is a really scary thought because I've really reduced the number of paper items I have in my office. So I am highly linked to access to resources. In fact, if somebody were to ask me what is one of my major benefits of being on faculty at Xavier, I would say access to not only Xavier's library, but to OhioLink, as well as other resources. So that's a little, I don't know how I would answer that. I'm not sure where I would
you
go,
would
to be
go.
honest.
I know, right? What do you think is scary about going to the bookshelf? That's an interesting word.
It is it's a one-dimensional source.
Okay.
And so one thing that I value highly in today's environment is the ability to link to new ideas via whatever source it is that you're working with. And so when I tend to purchase a book, I may purchase a hard copy for the library, but I also really value the electronic source because I think that gives students access. In fact, now a number of sources that I'm familiar with, have QR codes or links within that text in that book. So students are starting to be able to find information and go deeper, especially when they're studying particular issues. So to me, that's something that we can't offer when you're just looking at a one-dimensional page.
Okay, I get that. That makes sense. Yeah. Besides research or bringing your class over, what are some of the other reasons that you come to the library?
one of my guilty pleasures is the development of a summer reading list that involves fiction.
Oh, great.
And so while I don't participate, I pay close attention to what the librarians recommend in summer reading. I know they have a big contest.
Oh, in our contest. That's what you say you don't participate in.
I don't participate in the contest,
Okay.
but I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to have access to books, and so much they drop them off at the CLC. It's a lot easier than going to my local public library.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Why don't you participate in our contest, do you think? You should, if you read also.
I should, and I should also make a cake in the shape of a book sometime. I think you all offer really nice contests. So at this point, if I can just have the opportunity to do the reading, I feel like I've probably, done what I can.
Done what you can. I get that. Gotcha.
But I did actually last year when you wrapped up the books for Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And suggested that we find a blind date. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was a great experience.
Oh, cool. What did you like best about that?
Not knowing
Not
that we
having
were going to
any-
date. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, we enjoyed that too. We
Yeah.
like that. Okay, just a couple more questions.
Sure.
And you mentioned, sort of appreciating technology and moving with the times yourself. Based on what you know of today's technology, how might you envision libraries will provide information and exist 10 years from now?
I would expect that libraries would move to different platforms. With this convergence of media instead of text or chat, I would expect more collaborative, mediated, synchronous communication.
Okay.
So I might be able to link into an actual librarian, and we would have a face-to-face call, so to
Okay.
speak, via a video chat. I think that type of experience, that's what I have appreciated the most, is that collaborative thinking. And so I would expect if we could move from expecting students to come in and meet with a librarian, that they could actually access in a virtual framework. That's something that I think would be really valuable.
Okay, great. And one last question. For the day, you're the ruler of library world. There's no crazy idea. What would you do in libraries today?
If there was a way to have the folks that are at the front, right, the front desk, if there was a way that they could make eye contact when I'm walking through, and I know everybody's reading, looking, researching, working, but I think that connectedness would help me feel like that we're part of things. So when I don't know, when I think of libraries, I think of this kind of a divide, and just the intentionality of let's connect, and not maybe just through the resources, but kind of as people as well.
Okay. Expand on that
Kinda
idea
silly.
of, no, it's not silly at all, actually. I totally understand what you're saying. When if you think about the library as a divide, how do you mean?
And I'm an extrovert. Everybody's like in their stuff, in their, their head down, doing that work. And I feel like we have collaborative space. And what I've really appreciated, for example, is when I see a librarian working with a class out in that collaborative space.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right? So, so whether it's there or just the, so I think just, and this isn't ruling the world of libraries, but how can, just the increase of accessibility, I guess.
Okay, in a more personal way.
That's right.
Right, makes you feel more connected to the library.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Well, wonderful, Jenny. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
talking to us.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having me.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.